There.
All right, today is Monday, November 5th, 2007. I'm Mary Margaret Bailey. I'm here in Mobile interviewing Victor H. Lott Jr., who served as president of the Alabama State Bar from 1998 to 1999. Mr. Lott, how old are you and how long have you been practicing law?
I'm 57, and I've been practicing law since 1975, so I guess 32 years.
Where do you practice and what is the general nature of your law practice?
I'm with Adams and Reese, and I've got a general commercial or corporate practice. I do a lot of real estate, a lot of transactions, a lot of financial transactions.
And when did you start with Adams and Reese, and where did you work before that?
I started practicing law at Lyons, Pipes and Cook in 1975, and I practiced with them until 1991. Then I practiced by myself for 2 years. And then I went with Adams and Reese in 1993, and I've been with them since then.
Where did you grow up and why did you decide to become a lawyer?
I grew up here in Mobile, and I was thinking about this question last night. I don't have any other lawyers in my family. My dad was a banker, but I wanted to be a lawyer back as far as I can remember. And when I was in maybe high school, or certainly by the time I was in college, I went to see Mr. Sam Pipes at Lyons Pipes and Cook. And just told him I'd like to do something around the office because I just wanted to be around a law office and see what it was all about. And he hired me as a runner, and I was certain that's what I wanted to do after that.
What led you to run for the position of president of the Alabama State Bar?
Well, I was involved in the Mobile Bar Association fairly early in my practice, in the Young Lawyers Organization, and then I got appointed to the Mobile Bar Grievance Committee, which I ultimately chaired in the mid-'80s. And at that point there was only one commissioner from each circuit, and I think that the longtime commissioner from Mobile was Ben Harris. Ben became president, and the position opened up, and it was something I was interested in doing. I decided to run for commissioner, and then I served commissioner for 9 years, and served some other roles with the state bar during that period of time, and then rotated off in the late 90s. And had really toyed with running for bar president, and sort of decided against it. About 2 years after my last term as a commissioner, I sort of decided on the spur of the moment that I might be interested in it again, and ran, and luckily nobody ran against me. So.
Were there any special initiatives that you worked on while you were president?
Well, we revamped a lot of the committee structure of the bar, which had gotten a little stale. There were a lot of committees that seems like each president sort of establishes a few committees of his or her own, and then some of them are sort of special purpose committees. They serve their purpose, and then they don't serve any purpose. So we cleaned up a lot of committees that didn't function very well anymore, and revamped the committee structure. We had a very controversial decade with the Supreme Court of Alabama, and did not have a very good relationship with the court. And I made a special effort, starting actually when I was president-elect, to try to improve those relations, which we did. We worked a lot on the disciplinary rules and updated some of the disciplinary process. But in particular, we tried to bring focus to voluntary lawyer organizations, and the state bar's effort, the other efforts like the Mobile Bar's effort, which even then was a real model program. So it was, it was a busy year.
What was the controversy with the Supreme Court?
Well, it really dated back to, it was very political, like it probably still is, but the court was trying to, at least as I recall, trying to ensure a sort of more or less permanent Democrat majority on the Supreme Court, and took some actions to support an effort that was actually pending in federal court at the time to try to ensure or try to create some districts. Instead of having at-large elections for all of the positions on the court, they were going to create some districts for certain of the positions. The districts that they were considering were, gerrymandered in a way that that would ensure, in all likelihood, Democrats would be elected. And the state attorney general at the time, who I think was Jimmy Evans, supported this effort, and the way that they went about it was failing to appeal a decision of the U.S. District Court out of Montgomery that ordered that happen as a way of settling some litigation that entailed an allegation that the electoral system for Supreme Court judges was discriminatory. The bar adamantly opposed that and encouraged that the district court's decision be appealed to the 11th Circuit. It was contrary to decisions in other circuits at the time, and the Supreme Court and the Attorney General refused to do that. And it really put the bar at odds with the court. Ultimately, that was the basis on which Attorney General Evans was defeated by Jeff Sessions. And Jeff Sessions forced the appeal, and the appeal was successful, which is why we do not have a district-based electoral system for Supreme Court justices today.
All right. Let's see. In addition to the leadership positions that you've held at both with the local and state bar, you've also held leadership positions in the community, such as serving as a board member of the Mobile Area Chamber of Commerce, the YMCA, the Boys and Girls Clubs, Mobile Ballet, the Alabama Conservation and Natural Resources Foundation. What do you consider to be keys to successful leadership?
Well, I think you've got to have a real vision if you're going to assume a leadership position in any organization. I'm not one of these people that thinks that a leadership position allows you just to basically hold the chair and let the management run things or react to whatever happens to come up during your term. I think you've got to take hold of an organization with a purpose and move it from A to B. I tried to do that in the organizations in which I've become involved. But, I think vision, you've got to have, the time and the ethic to devote to the organization. And a lot of organizations take a whole lot of time. So, I think often you see people, particularly in community positions, that come in and let the lay leadership sort of do everything, and they just get the accolades. But I really don't think that's what leadership's all about.
What do you think are the keys to a successful law practice?
Nothing replaces work ethic. There's practicing law is more and more difficult, more and more demanding. I don't think it can be practiced on a basis that that compromises your work ethic. There's so many aspects to the practice of law now. The easiest thing we do is actually render legal advice or try to resolve a problem for clients. But trying to deal with an office, partners, clients, the ethical responsibilities that we have, ensuring that you don't get yourself in trouble from the standpoint of the advice you render, keeping up with the law, CLE, plus trying to do something else for your profession, your community, and then deal with your family. Makes practicing law the most demanding profession that I know of.
What advice do you have for lawyers who are just beginning their law practice?
Well, just that. I think you've got to figure out, what you're willing to give to the practice. And it is, it's the old adage, it's a jealous mistress. And that's absolutely truer today than I think it ever has been. You've got to decide just how much you're willing to sacrifice if you want to have a successful practice. But everybody measures success differently. I think it's very difficult, even more difficult than it was when I started practicing, to try to draw that bright line between your obligations to your family and your community and your profession, and your practice, and trying to make time for all of those. And I think that some of the young people coming into the practice these days underestimate the almost overwhelming effort it takes to deliver on all of those areas that really create the quality of life that you want. So I wish there was a way that the law schools could spend more time trying to impart some of the practicalities of what the profession is all about, so that people have a better idea of it when they come out of law school. Because what I see so many times, students that are very bright, have got the ability to be good lawyers, and they get into it and just find out that it's not for them, and more often than not it's because of the commitment. It just requires something that is way beyond 8 to 5.
Are there any specific habits that you have employed in your practice that you would recommend?
Well, again, I think you've got to be organized to try to to get everything done that the practice requires of you, and I think that's where it's so difficult for a young lawyer that's a sole practitioner or that's practicing with another young lawyer. For instance, neither of whom have got mentors or somebody to really help them figure out how to prioritize their business intake, prioritize the work that they do for clients, try to figure out the financial end of the practice, and make it all make sense. I think it's very difficult, and I know that that's been a continuing effort at the State Bar and is again today, in terms of trying to set up a mentoring program that could provide some assistance to young lawyers. But having somebody that can fill that role, whether it's a partner, or an experienced friend, or an organization like the Mobile Bar, the State Bar, that can give you some guidance as to how to begin your practice and how to create good habits, and then again the work ethic.
Right. And can you think of any specific pitfalls that face new lawyers and how they can avoid them?
This is repetitive, but I think that young lawyers underestimate what the practice requires. I think that a lot of young lawyers these days, in particular, the law has gotten so much more complicated than it was when I started practicing. Literally, a specialist or someone who only did one thing was very rare in 1975. Even at the larger law firms, you might have had people that litigate and people that didn't litigate. And you had the tax lawyer that pretty much just did tax and estate work and maybe some real estate and transactions. But you didn't have people who only did certain types of litigation, or people that only did divorce work or only did real estate work. And these days the law's become so much more specialized. I think it's probably bordering on malpractice to try to be a general practitioner. I think that young people coming out of law school don't understand that, and within a few years, what they learn in law school has grown from the standpoint of the development of the law. It's changing so rapidly. There's more and more statutes and regulations, more and more changes in procedure, and I think it's a mistake for young lawyers to try to do everything. I think they need to focus on one area of the law, even if it's a fairly broad area, like litigation, and really try to master it and keep up with the evolving law in that area, and have the guts to turn something down that's outside of their area.
When did you decide to specialize in transactional law?
Well, it was really something that sort of developed without too much intent on my part. At Lyons Pipes and Cook, it was primarily a litigation firm. We did some commercial work. I took my turn at litigating and spent lots of days in what was then district court, the lower jurisdiction court, trying non-jury cases and whatnot. But we also did a lot of oil and gas work at the time, and I started doing that because I'd actually put myself through law school doing abstract work for an oil and gas company in Tuscaloosa, and I had a background in that. After I'd done oil and gas work for a number of years, which involved a lot of real estate-oriented title work, I started doing more real estate transactions and then real estate financing, and that just led me into more of a business practice that was transaction-based. So it was sort of something that developed over a period of 10 or 15 years.
Do you have any advice for a young lawyer who might be thinking of going into the specialty of transactional law?
Well, first of all, we see a lot of law students now that come out of law school and are very fixed on what they think they want to do, and I think they're being unfair to themselves. It takes a special talent to be a litigator, for instance, and I think it takes a different set of talents to do transactional work or domestic work or tax work. And I think you've got to find what works for you, where your area of interest is, where your talents lie. Some people are very comfortable speaking on their feet, talking to a judge or a jury. Some people are not. Some people are bored stiff with documentation and contract type work. Others find that that's pretty interesting. So, I would encourage young lawyers to be as open as possible when they're exploring different areas of the law and try to try their hand at several things over a relatively short period of time, and then bring some focus to their practice, at a point when they can really begin to develop some expertise. Transactional area requires that you be able to read and comprehend fairly quickly and to write pretty well. The writing skills are something that we're losing. We see some of the brightest students coming out of law school right now that have just got grades and LSAT scores off the wall who cannot write a letter. And I think that everybody's so used to communicating in little spits of sentences and by email and whatnot, and that's how they communicate. But while correspondence may not be as important as it once was, expressing a thought in a contract requires that you be able to express yourself in writing, and that's becoming a lost art, and it really jumps out at you when you read a contract that doesn't capture the essence of the business deal between the parties.
What is the best thing that you ever did with regard to your law practice?
I mean, a couple of things, I guess. I'm very fortunate to have been able to practice with Mr. Sam Pipes and Mr. Walter Cook. They were at Lance Pipes and Cook. I knew them and had the opportunity to work with them as a runner and as a summer clerk at that firm for a number of years, and then I practiced with them until they died, which unfortunately was at a relatively young age for both of them. I don't think either one of them made it to 65. They were really, really special guys. They tremendous lawyers, a lot of fun to practice with. They had a unique focus on the practice that I think we've lost, because they were absolutely dedicated to their clients and their profession. Billing was really something that went along with the end result, but it was not the focus that it is now. The other thing that I think I sort of fell into is when I was practicing on my own in the early 90s. I was doing fine and enjoying it, and actually a former associate at Lance Pipes and Cook who had joined Adams and Reese when we opened our office here in 1991, called me one day and said that they were looking for a commercial lawyer, that they had some litigators and they needed a commercial lawyer, and would I have any interest? And I told them I didn't think so. I had done the large firm thing. But he kept calling, and some of the other members of the firm persisted, and really it was about a year or so later, and I became interested and ultimately joined the firm in 1993. And that's been very exciting for me. I had the opportunity that I think was probably unique in this market of joining a multi-state firm that had 3 offices at the time and about 100 lawyers, and watching it grow to a sort of a super regional firm that's got 10 offices now and over 300 lawyers, and again, that's been very, very exciting for me, and something I've enjoyed being a part of.
You were honored in 1999 as the Alabama Pro Bono Lawyer of the Year. How has your law practice benefited from your pro bono work, and do you have any humorous stories that you could share about a particular pro bono case or client?
I think the award, which was very gratifying, came as a result of the efforts that I undertook during my year as president to try to bring greater focus to our responsibilities to give back as members of the profession, and ensure that people have greater access to the legal system. I think the problem's gotten worse, not better. There are a lot of lawyers, particularly here in Mobile, and in Birmingham and in Montgomery, the larger cities, Huntsville, Tuscaloosa, where there are very excellent pro bono efforts. But even here, you know, there are restrictions on things like domestic cases. A lot of the pro bono efforts don't reach to those, and that's where so much of the need is. The State Bar has a great organization in terms of its voluntary lawyers program, but to some extent, you know, its greatest effort is also where most of the lawyers are, which is in the cities, which happens to be where the local bars have already got pretty good organizations, and it's really out in the rural areas like the Black Belt where there are not many lawyers. We've actually got some counties in Alabama where there are not a dozen lawyers in the whole county, and you know, that's where our citizenry really doesn't have access to the legal system, and of course finances is another issue. But it's beyond can somebody afford access. We just have a lot of areas where there are just not many lawyers, and it's hard to convince somebody from Mobile or Montgomery or Birmingham, you know, to go to Marengo County and to get involved in counties like that. So, you know, we tried to coordinate what some of the not-for-profits are doing, like legal services, and some of the other organizations that have sprung up since then, like Appleseed and others. Try to coordinate those efforts with the state bar and local bar efforts. And, you know, they gave me the award for doing that. So it was not so much focused on any, you know, one particular case that I was involved in. It was more trying to create an effort that would be consistent in trying to improve the access to justice in our state. You know, I did something recently for a small not-for-profit that was involved in trying to provide hurricane relief after Katrina, and they had to negotiate with the county of Mobile for some funding and some space and some other needs, and I got involved with them and met with them, and they were good people and very appreciative. And I called Jay Ross, who was representing the county, and I said, Jay, I'm going to be involved on behalf of these people, and he thought I was kidding. He said, how did you get involved with these people? And I said, well, it's through the Bar Association. And he said, well, we're going to have to go hire a real lawyer to represent the county. But you know, to me, that's very rewarding to be able to get into something like that, and you know, a lot of times it allows you know, the client to cut through some of the bureaucracy, and you can really do in a very short period of time, you know, a real service for a small organization like that. So, you know, I've enjoyed that. Our firm actually made a commitment that every lawyer in the firm has got to do a certain number of hours of pro bono each year, and we actually seconded a lawyer to Appleseed for a year. So we've got a you know, a firm belief in supporting pro bono, and you know, I think it's something that a lot more firms, particularly the larger firms, are catching on to now, and I think that's important.
Hey, Margaret, we can make a change to this right at
Okay.
the end of this. We're back up and going again, so whenever you're ready.
Okay. Mr. Lott, would you share something that you think is unique or historic about the circuit in which you practice?
Well, you know, the Mobile Bar is it's really unique on a national basis. It's one of the oldest organized bars in the country, and I'm pretty sure it's got the oldest code of professional responsibility of any bar in the nation, which I think speaks highly of the organized bar here. And you know, if you look at some of the names of the firms and whatnot that have been around here in Mobile, those names reach back a long way. and we've got a a bar association here that I think has been a leader in in the state in a lot of initiatives. Again, like the pro bono initiative, which is not only a model in Alabama, but is used as a model all over the country for participation. So, I think we've got a bar here that's something we ought to really be proud of.
Tell us about your recollections of a memorable lawyer from this circuit.
Well, again, I'd have to go back to Mr. Sam Pipes. He was his son and son-in-law and at least one of his grandsons have practiced with Lyons, Pipes and Cook for a good while. But Mr. Pipes, in addition to being a past president of the state bar, and someone that really inspired me to get involved in bar service, was just a unique person and a unique lawyer. He so many of the things that come to my mind when I'm representing clients or talking with young lawyers really came right out of his mouth. He's one of those guys that was everybody's mentor. He got to work at 4:30 in the morning. He worked 6 days a week. He focused and thought that the smallest matter he had for the least significant client was every bit as important as the largest matter he was handling for any large client. And he didn't just say that; he actually believed it. And so, his work ethic, his knowledge of the law was astounding. I mean, there wasn't an area of the law that you could bring up that he didn't know something about. And his instincts were remarkable as well. So I think that's the most fortunate experience I've had practicing law is being associated with Mr. Pipes.
Okay. Where did you go to law school, and what was your most memorable experience there?
I went to law school at the University of Alabama. And probably my most memorable experience there was meeting my wife, who I started dating when I was a freshman in law school, and she was in undergraduate school at the university. And we got married during law school, and I've carried that one with me.
Who is the lawyer who most influenced you, and what interesting stories do you recall about him or her?
Again, Mr. Pipes and Mr. Cook were great. Just great to practice with. I've talked some about Mr. Pipes, but Mr. Cook was he had an enormous number of cases that he handled. I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, and he had all these young lawyers like me that were there, and he'd give us, our ration of cases, and then about once a week we'd have a meeting with him. And he would sit there and he'd have an update on every case we were working on. We'd have to come in there and he'd start firing questions at us about each case, and he would make notes on a one page of a legal pad covering about 30 cases. And he'd cover each case on one line, and he could write tinier than anybody I've ever seen in my life with the sharpest pencil. And he would those meetings were intense. We were scared to death before those meetings, but he forced us to stay on schedule and to be organized and to have a plan for each case, a strategy. He was mindful of cost. He was mindful of the quality of the job we were doing. We got a tremendous amount of instruction from Mr. Cook, and plus he was just a great, fun guy. He'd take us out every afternoon for coffee at 3 o'clock, and we'd walk over to the old battle house and the whole firm, and we'd sit over there and have coffee for about 30 minutes. And that sort of leisurely camaraderie in an office doesn't happen much anymore. But but he was a great, great fun guy to practice with.
What is the most interesting case or transaction that you've handled?
I've been fortunate to get involved with some real characters. I did a good bit of work for Bart Chamberlain here, who was very controversial and ultimately left the country and just died a couple of years ago. But Bart was very high profile and somebody that was very difficult to represent and probably prepared me for a representation that I came into almost by accident. We have a Jackson, Mississippi office, and one of my partners up there knew Bernie Ebbers, who at the time was the CEO of WorldCom. And Mr. Ebbers was buying some timberland and asked if we had anybody that knew anything about timberland transactions, and I had done a few of those, and so my partner asked me if I would do this, and it was a nice transaction, and I got involved with Mr. Ebbers in 1999 and ultimately became his basically general counsel, and so I've spent the last 8 years doing a lot of work for him, billions of dollars worth of deals, and I was his lead counsel in negotiating his departure from WorldCom, and ultimately in resolving about 200 class actions against him, settling with the Justice Department and the SEC, the State of New York Attorney General's office, and creating a restitution fund for WorldCom shareholders that involved liquidating about $2 billion in his assets. So that's been pretty fascinating.
Well, when you say that Mr. Chamberlain prepared you for that, was he the same type of client?
Yeah, he was. They were both, very demanding, very financially savvy. Did a lot of difficult transactions. They were difficult to get along with, but I think I got along with both of them because I would just tell them what I think, and I think that they, were both people that did not respect somebody that would pander to them, and so I ended up getting along, well with both of them, and those were two pretty interesting situations for me.
What is your most memorable or humorous legal experience?
I was thinking about that, and I've, there's been lots of things over the years that have been humorous, but right after I was elected to my first term as a state bar commissioner, I got appointed to the disciplinary commission, the State Bar's disciplinary commission, which is a 3-person commission, and it essentially sort of functions as almost a grand jury for the State Bar's disciplinary process, and we would meet monthly by statute, be the 3 commissioners and the general counsel of the State Bar, and he would sort of serve like the district attorney to a grand jury, if you will. He would present hundreds of cases to us. We covered about 2,000 cases a year, and most of them were fairly minor. Somebody that wouldn't respond to a client, and they complained that the lawyer was not returning phone calls, and and some of them were more serious, warranting suspension or disbarment. But we would have a stack of cases that we would review, and then we'd get together monthly. And Tony McLean, we hired Tony McLean, the Bar Commission did, right before or right as I was appointed to the disciplinary commission. And we had met a couple of times with the previous general counsel, and Tony was going to meet with us, and it was me and Phil Adams and Wade Baxley, both of whom ultimately became state bar presidents as well. And they were both real cut-ups, still are. And Tony came in and he said, "Okay, now how do we do this?" And I said, "Well, you know, you present each case to us, make a recommendation, and we vote on it. You move to the next case." And he goes, "Well, okay." So he presented the first case, and he said, "Now y'all vote." And we sort of looked at each other and winked, and we did rock, paper, scissors. and and his jaw dropped. And we said, "That's how we vote." And he tells that story to this day.
What changes have you observed in the practice of law since you were admitted in 1975 that you consider to have had the most profound impact on the legal system?
You know, I think definitely the billable hour. When I started practicing in '75, we kept up with our time, but not rigidly. And it was something that was considered in billing a client, but even with insurance companies, for instance, you know, it was just a factor that you would weigh, and it was general. I mean, you may finish a case that you've been working on for a year and look at the size of the file and the complexity of the issues and the amount of money involved and the result and generally how much time the lawyer spent on it, and you would come up with an amount, and the bill was about 4 lines long. Basically said for services rendered, and might give some general description of what those services were. And then there was an amount. And it's really in the 70s when lawyers, at least lawyers here in Mobile, started keeping more rigid time. And I'm sorry to say I was actually one of the young lawyers at Lyons, Pipes and Cook that you know, that thought that was a good idea. And in fact, it was a great idea from the standpoint of increasing our billings and ultimately our compensation. You know, but we hung ourselves. And if I could take that back and go back to the days when we billed based on the quality of service and the result that we produced, I think we'd probably all be a lot more human for it.
I skipped one question. Going back one, what was your scariest legal experience, whether in law school, during the bar exam, or during your practice?
You know, I tried a couple of cases, you know, some minor cases in my earlier days, and I, you know, was certainly nervous about those. But I think, you know, the only absolute fright I can recall was in connection with the bar exam. You know, I was scared to death because I was married, had to pass the bar in order to have a job, needed to have a job, and you know, luckily I did pass. Although I sat at the table at the bar exam with 5 other people. There were 6 people sitting at each table, and I happened to be the only person at the table that passed that year. So you know, we were very nervous, and I was elated when I got that envelope a couple of months later.
Do you have any other thoughts or stories that you would like to share?
You know, I think that even more so than back in the '90s when I was, you know, more involved with the bar, you know, I think it's something that not enough lawyers think about, and not enough lawyers get involved in their, you know, in their bar associations, whether they're local bars or state bars. You know, and I think that's all reflective of just the impersonality of the practice, and the focus on, you know, on compensation just the fact that there's a lot less focus on the profession as a profession and as a service, what we can give back through our bars. So, I wish that there was some way that we could reach younger lawyers to encourage them to, and their firms, to take the time and support those who are willing to take the time to get involved in their bar organizations.
Okay, well, that's all my questions. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.